It was the 4th year I'd forced Simon to be with me. He'd become a successful entrepreneur, the hottest new name in all of New York City. The day his company went public, he held a ribbon-cutting ceremony. He didn't invite me. As I watched him on the screen, looking so confident and full of life, I suddenly started seeing strange comments scrolling across the feed. Haha, I knew Simon was the real deal. He even brought his cute secretary to the IPO. His ex-boyfriend is so pathetic. He's all smiles now, but he has no idea Simon's about to dump him. Who feels sorry for him? If it weren't for his rich dad forcing Simon to be with him, he'd be nothing. So gross. Exactly. He deserved to get dumped for making someone who doesn't love him stay. Don't underestimate him, though. If he hadn't thrown that tantrum, Simon might never have realized he was already in love with the secretary. LOL, Simon's too soft. He actually put up with that disgusting ex for 4 years before breaking it off. TSK, TSK. It was all about the money. But later, the ex's dad gets reported for fraud, racks up a huge debt, and jumps off a building. Kind-hearted Simon even gives the guy money for a proper burial, but the bastard just throws it all away. Seeing those comments sent a chill through me. Over the past 4 years, Simon hadn't treated me badly, but he'd never been particularly warm either. Time wears everything down, and I suddenly realized I might not be that into Simon anymore. Simon woke up early and was standing by the bed getting dressed. The noise stirred me, and I leaned against the headboard, resting my chin in my hand as I watched him. Simon had been the campus heartthrob back in college. Over time, his boyish charm had faded, replaced by the magnetic pull of a mature man. I squinted, admiring him like a piece of art. I must have stared too long. Simon shot me a cold look before turning and walking out of the room. Outside, the smart assistant's voice chimed. It hit me then that today was supposed to be an important day. I thought about it for a while, but couldn't remember what it was. I went back to sleep for a bit. By the time I woke up again, it was already noon. I shuffled into the living room in my slippers. The whole place was designed to my taste. Simon preferred a minimalist, cold aesthetic, which I hated, so I had filled every corner with stuffed animals and dolls. I took a bite of toast and sat down on the sofa. Happy, who was already awake, padded over lazily and curled up on my lap to nap. Happy is my dog, a Samoyed with a coat of fluffy white fur. My dad bought this place for us back then, so it was huge, but with just the two of us, it always felt empty. I turned on the TV just to have the sound of human voices in the room. I was about to grab my phone when a familiar voice came from the screen. Simon's cool, detached face filled the large display. I froze for a moment. Then I smacked myself on the head. Today was the ribbon-cutting ceremony for his company's IPO. I put my phone down and focused on the screen. Simon was wearing the same suit from this morning. Broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and long legs. The sharp line of his Adam's apple stood out against his impossibly pale skin. His stunning features held up perfectly, even on the raw camera feed. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. Simon and I were in the same year at college. He was a computer science major. I studied literature. I first noticed him during freshman orientation. He was handsome and aloof. Even I had to admit he looked incredible in the candid photos people posted of him on the school forums. Then I saw him in person for the first time. The sun was scorching, but under the shade of a tree, his face was radiant, with beads of sweat slowly trickling down his skin. In that moment, I finally understood what it was to be completely captivated by someone's looks. I don't really consider myself gay, but there was something about Simon's cool intensity that completely bewitched me. I had nothing but time and money, but Simon seemed to be one of those people who genuinely saw money as dirt. He always rejected me flat out, sometimes even throwing a few cutting remarks my way. He'd look down on me, his eyes filled with the same disdain you'd have for trash. The way his red lips moved when he spoke, it sent a thrill through my entire nervous system. The more I couldn't have him, the more I wanted him. I chased him for a year. Nothing worked. My dad told me money can solve anything. And if money can't, power can. I'd already thrown a lot of money at the problem. In the end, My dad had a single conversation with Simon, and Simon agreed to be my boyfriend. I loved Simon. When he graduated and wanted to start a business, I used all my resources to help him. I willingly became his supportive partner, holding down the fort at home for years. Standing next to Simon was his new secretary, a guy with a baby face. He looked sweet and innocent, and his eyes would crinkle into crescents when he smiled, giving him a really friendly vibe. But all I saw was a challenge. After the host finished their speech, a small smile finally touched Simon's lips. He reached out, snipped the ribbon, and lowered his head. All I could see was the chiseled line of his jaw. My hand was stroking Happy's fur. Just as I was about to say something, lines of text, like scrolling comments, appeared before my eyes. OMG, OMG. Let's congratulate Simon on finally breaking free from his psycho ex-boyfriend. He must be smiling from ear to ear standing next to his secretary. Hehe. I can't wait to see Simon dump that disgusting ex. Payback time. That ex threatened to get Simon expelled to make him date him. But good news. The ex's dad is going down in a few days. Simon can finally be with his beloved secretary. Happy nudged his snout into my stomach and let out a soft whine. I snapped back to reality and quickly pulled my hand away. Happy leaned in and started licking the hand that had just been gripping his fur too tightly. After thinking for a long time, I came to a conclusion. This world was a novel. The male lead was Simon, and the other male lead was his little secretary. And I was just the cannon fodder, a stepping stone for Simon's success. As that thought sank in, I suddenly started to laugh. When Simon came home that night, he smelled of alcohol. 2 faint blushes colored his pale cheeks. He was dazed, collapsing onto the sofa and staring blankly at the ceiling. I'd been outside in the cold wind long enough. I came back inside and lay down on top of him. He flinched, instinctively trying to push me away. I brushed his hand aside and fumbled with the buttons of his shirt. His abdomen was lean and defined, his skin so pale that a light touch would leave a red mark. My body was cold, and I was determined to make him feel it with me. When Simon couldn't push me off, he stopped resisting. He just stared lifelessly at the ceiling, his lips moving as if he were trying to say something. I leaned in closer. No sound came out. His hot, damp lips brushed against my earlobe, and I shivered. "Simon, do you hate me?" I whispered, resting my head on his shoulder and looking at his profile. "Do you hate me for forcing you to be with me all these years?" The drunk man couldn't comprehend my words. He just nuzzled his head against me, trying to find my lips. I closed my eyes. All I could sense was the overwhelming smell of alcohol. After it was all over, I asked, "I don't like your new secretary. Can you fire him?" Simon turned his head. He seemed a bit more sober now, his eyes clear. He glanced at the TV. "On what grounds?" he said coolly. "I think he's doing a great job. There's no reason to let him go." I smirked, tracing circles on his chest with my finger. "I just don't like him." Simon frowned at me, his eyes heavy with an exhaustion he couldn't hide. "Don't be ridiculous, Carson." My expression instantly turned cold. I grabbed his tie. "Your company goes public, and he's the one standing by your side, not me." "Simon, what is that supposed to mean?" The air grew tense. Simon pushed me off him. He sat up, rubbing his temples and buttoning his shirt. He turned his head slightly. "I'll sleep in the study." With that, he walked quickly toward the study. I slowly sat up and pulled my clothes together. Seeing one of his masters leave, Happy came over to act as my personal heater. I stroked his snowy white fur. "This is so annoying, Happy," I muttered to myself, feeling like I was losing my mind. A long time ago, Simon had given me a sum of money, saying it was for the house. I took it. Even though the house was in my name, Simon had paid his share. Technically, I was the one who should leave. That night, I started packing. As I was stuffing the last of my things into a suitcase, Happy grew anxious. He whined and licked my hand. I smiled and ruffled the fur on his head. Then I said seriously, "Happy, even though we raised you together, Simon fed you more often. You should stay with him, okay?" Happy let out a few barks, his mouth open in a panting grin. as if protesting. I thought for a few minutes. Then I grabbed Happy's bag of dog food and shoved it into the suitcase too. Simon was busy with work. He probably wouldn't have time to feed a dog in the future. Taking Happy with me felt like he was the only thing Simon was leaving me with. That night, I returned to the family mansion I hadn't seen in years. I rang the bell, and the butler opened the door. He was surprised to see me. After all, when I'd had a falling out with my father, I'd sworn I'd never come back. For years was a long time to keep my word, I guess. He helped me with my suitcase and led me inside, chatting as we went. Every other sentence was about how obedient I was as a child. I couldn't listen anymore. Just as I was about to interrupt him, my father was already standing in front of me in his pajamas. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked the same as ever, stern and imposing. His lips were pressed into a thin, emotionless line. He raised an eyebrow at me with a smirk that wasn't quite a smile. He nodded, gesturing for me to follow him into his study. I stood before my father. "Did Simon mistreat you?" he asked. I lifted my head, acting nonchalant. "I don't like him anymore. Can't I just dump him?" My dad raised me. He knows me better than I know myself. He just gave a cold, humorless laugh. "So, our little Carson has finally decided to give up his undying love and return to the straight and narrow?" I pouted. I turned my head away, avoiding my dad's smiling eyes. He'd had the exact same expression when I begged him to make Simon be with me back in college. He said being with Simon wasn't the right path. But I was crazy about him. So my dad pulled a few strings and let me wander down that crooked path for a while. My return was something he'd expected all along. I turned to leave. "Don't overthink it," my dad said slowly. "I'll always be your safe harbor." I shrugged. Suddenly, I remembered the comments from yesterday. I decided to give him a friendly warning. "Be careful lately. Watch out for anyone trying to report you. I still need a lot of money to support myself, you know." My dad laughed at that. His fingers tapped on the wooden armrest of his chair. "Top, top, top." I know. I didn't care if he was really listening. At his age, having reached his position, he knew what to do better than I did. Anyone who knew my dad thought he was a stuffy, serious man. The reality would probably shock them. I had never seen my father lose his composure. When my mom died, he smiled and told me, "Your mom is gone, but you still have me." The only thing she left behind was a gaudy little trinket. My dad held my hand and had me throw it into the sea. I was 12 then. I understood what he meant, but I didn't care. My mom didn't love me. The jury was still out on my dad. My first day back home, I slept until noon. The first thing I did when I woke up was grab my phone. I tossed it aside in frustration. My chat history with Simon was still stuck on a generic greeting from 2 days ago. I got out of bed. Happy jumped on me. The butler was holding Happy's leash, a standard smile on his face. "Young master, I've already taken Happy for his walk." I nodded. I waved him off and went to the dining room. My dad was reading the newspaper. When he saw me sit down, he spoke out of the blue. "Is there anything you want to do? I can have Mr. Williams arrange it for you." I took a bite of my toast. "Why aren't you at work?" My dad glanced up at me. "I was worried you'd die in your sleep." "You're insane," I muttered. I made plans to go drinking with some friends I hadn't seen in ages. We used to come to this bar all the time. But Simon hated the smell of alcohol, so I stopped going. When they heard I was back on the scene, my friends all raised their glasses, eager to get me drunk. I accepted every offer. After a few drinks, I wasn't dizzy. In fact, my mind felt clearer than ever. Just then, the guys who organized the gathering started shouting, "The best way to get over a breakup is to start a new relationship." They crowded around me, wiggling their eyebrows. "So, I've got some fresh faces at my new place. Young, tender, wanna give one a try?" I lazily lifted my eyelids, my body feeling limp, and waved my hand dismissively. But they took it as a yes. A few minutes later, the manager let a few guys in, all dressed in white shirts and black pants. One of them caught my eye. I opened my eyes wider and beckoned him over. I touched his face. "A little similar," I murmured to myself. The guy tensed up but let me do as I pleased. The others scattered. The room erupted in another round of cheers. The people I used to hang out with were all a bit twisted. Besides drinking, I found their other pastimes dirty. After all these years, this was the first time I'd ever said something like that. The guy's face was hot against my palm. He looked up at me. His skin was pale, almost glowing. He introduced himself in a soft voice. "My name is Chase. You can call me Chase, sir." I leaned back on the sofa, and he rested his head on my shoulder. He was a head taller than me. After a little while, I needed to use the restroom. I had Chase help me up. We pushed open the door to the private room. I didn't even have time to look up. Chase grunted as he was thrown to the ground. I leaned bonelessly against the doorframe. I lifted my gaze and saw Simon, his face an icy mask. The alcohol hit me. I almost thought I was hallucinating. Not until he grabbed my wrist and dragged me out of the bar. It hurt. My wrist really hurt. I kept repeating that to Simon. He found my car and pushed me against the hood. His hands were rubbing my shoulders frantically. I turned to look at him, blinking, still not fully processing what was happening. "What are you doing here?" Simon's gaze shifted from my shoulders to my face. His expression was dark, his jawline sharp and defined. "Where did he touch you?" I rolled my eyes at him. "What's it to you?" Simon paced back and forth in front of the car, his eyes stormy. "This is cheating. Carson, this is immoral." His voice was strained, on the verge of losing control. I was still bent over the car, and my chest shook as I started to laugh. The sound seemed to echo in my ribs. "We broke up, Simon. You have no right to tell me what to do anymore." Simon stopped pacing abruptly. He looked up, his eyes wide with shock. "Broke up? When? How come I don't know about it?" "I don't agree. Carson, you're not allowed to agree either." The street was dark, lit only by the faint, yellow glow of a single streetlight. It cast shadows on Simon's face, making his already sharp features look even more severe. I pushed myself up, turned around, and leaned casually against the car, enjoying his loss of control. "Well, I'm telling you now, we're breaking up, okay?" Simon clearly hadn't expected me to be so nonchalant. For all these years, hadn't I always been the one trailing after him like a puppy, trying to please him, apologizing profusely for a single cold glance, begging him not to break up with me? He clenched his jaw, about to say something. My eyes lit up as I looked past him. Well, I said, raising an eyebrow. "Look who's here." Simon's little secretary skidded to a halt. He looked helplessly at Simon, biting his lip with an innocent expression. "You disappeared so suddenly. I got worried," he said to Simon, his eyes glistening. "Anyone else would have melted." I rolled my eyes, stood up gracefully, and clapped my hands. "Your new flame is here, so I'll be on my way." Simon whipped his head around to look at me, frowning. "What new flame? What are you talking about, Carson?" I just shrugged, not bothering to explain. I opened the car door, put the key in the ignition, and started the engine. All in one smooth motion. Simon started banging on my window frantically. The soundproofing was too good I couldn't hear what he was saying. I could only see his little secretary anxiously gesturing and saying something to him. Simon impatiently shot the secretary a cold look and snapped something back. None of it mattered to me anymore. I drove away. I went home and passed out. The next morning, I woke up to multiple missed calls and texts from Simon. I ignored them. Then I noticed a new friend request. Curious, I accepted it. A second later, a message popped up. "It's Chase." It was followed by a photo of glistening, wet abs. He unsent it immediately. Then another message appeared. "Sorry, wrong picture. You're not mad, are you, Carson?" His seduction tactics were laughably bad. But after years of a bland diet with Simon, even this little bit of spice was enough to make my head spin. I playfully invited him to dinner. After receiving an enthusiastic voice message in reply, I tossed my phone aside, stared at the ceiling, and suddenly burst out laughing. Chase was a quick study. Not like your typical escort. The next few days were peaceful. I spent my time with Chase, and when I got bored, I decided to earn some good karma for my dad by volunteering at an orphanage. It was exhausting, but Chase never complained once. He had all the kids laughing hysterically. Watching from the side, I actually thought this kind of life wasn't so bad. My dad must have taken my warning to heart. Unlike what the comments predicted, he wasn't reported or thrown in jail. In fact, his career took another step forward. He became much busier. As I was blissfully lying in the yard staring at the sky, the scrolling comments appeared again. It's finally happening. Simon gets drugged and is rescued by his beloved secretary. LMAO. Who would have thought that someone as cold as Simon on the outside would be such a beast in bed? The secretary was on his knees the next day. Even though the ex never did anything good, we have to thank him for going crazy and drugging Simon. He really brought these two together. The limited set of comments played on a loop. They made me sound like a total psychopath who drugs their ex-boyfriend. I didn't take the comments seriously, but I underestimated the power of the plot. I wouldn't do it, but someone else would. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered it silently. The secretary's panicked screams came through the receiver. Mr. Carson, I was blind. I was a fool. Please save me. Ah, Simon's gone crazy. His shrill voice echoed in my ear, giving me goosebumps. After listening for a while, I calmly came to a conclusion. What did you do to provoke him? There was a moment of silence, followed by an even louder shriek. Please, Mr. Carson, Simon's going to kill me. Along with the secretary's crying, I could hear the sharp sound of things breaking, a frenzy of crashing and smashing. I listened for a bit longer but couldn't make anything out. I paused. Just as I was about to hang up, another piercing scream came through. Please, I'm begging you. Then the line went dead. I tossed my phone aside and stared at the ceiling for a few minutes. Then I shot up out of bed like a spring. I gave myself a pathetic little warning. Remember, you're just going to turn Simon over to the cops. You're not going to see if he's okay. I followed the address back to the home I had lived in for 4 years. The door was ajar. Shattered objects littered the entryway. The shoe cabinet was overturned, its contents scattered everywhere. As I walked further in, I saw the curtains were drawn, plunging the room into darkness. The moment I flipped on the light switch, a glass bottle flew past my face. I narrowed my eyes and looked at Simon, who was writhing miserably on the floor. His face was flushed, his eyes glazed over. His entire body was red, and his shirt was hanging open, as if someone had half undressed him. He glared at me through gritted teeth. His eyes were bloodshot, as if they were filled with blood. He seemed to have lost consciousness, running on pure instinct. I scanned the room but didn't see the little secretary. Carefully avoiding the broken porcelain on the floor, I walked over to Simon. I looked down at him. Where's your little secretary? Simon took a deep breath and struggled to lift his head to look at me. His eyes flickered a few times. Suddenly, he reached out and hugged my legs, his lips moving. Gone, he's gone. I kicked him out. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He was like a furnace. I lifted my foot to push his hands away and squatted down to face him. Our eyes met. I came here to laugh at you, I said, word by word, not to solve your problem. He looked at me, confused, his breath hot on my skin. Suddenly, his lip trembled. Don't go. What an act. No wonder I fell for him at first sight. Faced with a vulnerability I'd never seen before, I looked at his face and felt my resolve soften against my will. I reached out and touched his cheek, feeling the intense heat. My voice was much weaker now. What did he do to you? Simon, still on his knees, crawled toward me and buried his head against my waist, clinging to me. Drugs. He drugged me. He sniffled, his mind already clouded by the substance. He wanted to be with me. I said no. I don't like him. I like. His body was burning against mine, making me feel hot as well. Something hard was slowly grinding against my side, making its presence known. I frowned. Then I remembered the comments about the aphrodisiac. I sucked in a sharp breath and grabbed Simon's face, my thumb and forefinger digging into his jaw. Simon's mouth fell open. His red tongue darted out to touch his lips as he gazed at me with hazy eyes. He gave you an aphrodisiac? Simon couldn't answer, just kept licking his lower lip, his heated gaze fixed on me. I stared right back into his eyes. A few minutes later, ignoring his fumbling hands, I decisively dialed 911. When the paramedics arrived, they found Simon curled up beside me, muttering something incoherent and slightly obscene. Amid the paramedics' indescribable expressions, I emotionlessly grabbed Simon's hand and held it up toward them. I paused. Take him away first. I also need to call the police on the person who drugged him. The ambulance sped away, sirens blaring. I stood there amidst the wreckage and coldly dialed the police. Thanks to the ubiquitous security cameras Simon had installed in the house, the police quickly apprehended the suspect, his little secretary. At the police station, I met Simon's assistant, who had rushed over. He was an unassuming man with black-framed glasses. He bowed to me and apologized. "I'm so sorry to have bothered you, sir. This was our oversight. Mr. Simon fired Secretary Smith a few days ago, and we never expected him to retaliate like this, drugging Mr. Simon at a business dinner. It caused Mr. Simon significant harm. Please rest assured, we will do everything in our power to get justice for him. I am truly sorry for the trouble." I was a little surprised. "You know who I am." The man kept his back humbly bowed. "Everyone in the company knows your name, sir." He paused. "Mr. Simon's partner, Mr. Carson. Everyone really admires the relationship you two have." Hearing his words, I thoughtfully turned my head to look at the terrified, slightly dazed secretary inside the interrogation room. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. On the way to the hospital, I got a call from Chase. He was excitedly asking me to go watch the sunrise with him. I pretended not to notice the suggestive undertone in his voice. "Meet me at City General Hospital. There's something I need to tell you." He immediately replied, "Are you sick? Why are you at the hospital? Do you need me to take care of you?" I didn't answer his question. I just hung up. I suddenly wondered what kind of expression Simon would have on his face when he saw Chase. Chase got to the hospital before I did. When I arrived, he was standing near the entrance, frowning and smoking a cigarette. Seeing me, he stubbed it out and walked toward me with a fawning smile. I narrowed my eyes and raised an eyebrow at him. "You didn't put out your cigarette." Chase glanced back, looking a little embarrassed. He turned and stomped on the cigarette, but until it was completely extinguished. Only then did he turn his attention back to me, his face full of concern. "What are you doing at the hospital? Are you sick? Is it serious? If there's anything I can do to help, just say the word." I shrugged. "I'm introducing you to a friend." Chase's eyes lit up instantly. As an escort, he knew what kind of people I associated with. Being introduced to my friends was a completely different league from his old boss pimping him out to me. After I finished speaking, he was clearly eager but still put on a show. Should I have brought a gift? I pursed my lips, trying not to laugh at the thought of the look on Simon's face when he saw him. I shook my head. Chase moved to link his arm with mine and lifted his chin. He walked into the hospital lobby with his chest puffed out. We asked the front desk for the room number and made our way to Simon's VIP suite. Chase's excitement was visibly growing. I had Chase wait outside and knocked on Simon's door first. Simon was lying in the hospital bed, his face pale, dressed in a blue and white striped gown. He looked thin, his long, dark lashes casting shadows on his porcelain skin. I paused for a moment, then walked in and sat down. When Simon saw me, his eyes brightened for a second before dimming again. He stubbornly turned his head away. "Didn't we break up? Why are you here?" I casually pulled up a chair and picked an apple from the fruit basket on his bedside table. I began to peel it slowly. "To see how miserable you are." Simon gritted his teeth and turned back to glare at me resentfully. "You came to laugh at me? Why?" The great Simon, CO extraordinaire, drugged by his little secretary and landed in the hospital. Am I not allowed to find that funny? Then why didn't you help me, you know? I rolled my eyes. I shoved the poorly peeled apple into Simon's mouth. He took a bite, crunched down on the core, and his face twisted in bitterness for a second before he quickly composed himself. His eyes remained fixed on me. "Why did we break up? I never agreed." You can't do this. You were the one who pursued me first." Seeing my indifferent expression, Simon started to get agitated, his words tumbling out incoherently. I ignored him and waved for Chase to come in. Chase, who had been waiting anxiously outside, entered the room. The next second, his eyes met Simon's, and they both froze. Chase recognized the man who had beaten him up outside the bar a few days ago. Simon, on the other hand, saw the uncanny resemblance between himself and the man standing before him. I got up nonchalantly, pulled Chase over, and introduced him to Simon. "Meet my new friend, Chase." I put extra emphasis on new friend. Just as I expected, I saw a look of utter devastation on Simon's face. His lips trembled. He looks like me." I turned to the uneasy Chase and gave him a dazzling smile. "Yep, I found him specifically because he looks like you. Simon, I don't need you. I just like your face. And with my money and power, I can find anything and anyone I want." With that, I waved for Chase to leave. I sat down again. I took Simon's hand, the smile on my face softening slightly. My tone shifted. "But for now," I said, "I still prefer your face. So be more careful in the future. Don't let it get hurt." Simon squeezed my hand back. He lowered his head, his voice filled with despair. "I know. I've always known. Back in college, I had quite the reputation. I've always been drawn to pretty faces, and plenty of people at school benefited from my generosity in exchange for their company. The moment I found someone better looking, I dropped the previous one without a second thought. Whether it took money or power, I didn't care, as long as I could be with the person I wanted. Simon was the most beautiful person I had ever met. He was also the first person to refuse me after I slapped a check on the table in front of him and asked him to be my boyfriend. Back then, Simon was the dashing prince of the computer science department. So many people had a crush on him, girls and guys. The first time I confessed to him was in the library. He was wearing a white shirt and black pants, his dark hair falling over his eyes, revealing only the perfect, pale curve of his lower face. His lips were red, his teeth white. I sat down across from him with a check. Resting my chin in my hands, I squinted and told him I liked him and wanted to date him. Simon glanced up at me, then looked away. His pale cheeks flushed, probably with anger. "I'm not gay," he said softly. The large check sat on the table between us. His faded clothes, the yellowed books, the old brick phone by his hand. After a moment of silence, I reached out and tucked a strand of his bangs behind his ear. "You could be." Simon pressed his lips together and pushed the check back toward me, not daring to meet my eyes. He shot up from his chair and mumbled an apology. Then he turned and walked away. He was the first person to ever reject me. But I'm not one to give up until I get what I want. After being rejected by Simon several more times, check in hand, my patience finally wore thin. I cornered him in a stairwell after class one day. He was holding a stack of books. He'd cut his bangs. His eyes were bright and sparkling, his lashes long, with a prominent red mole at the corner of one eye. He frowned when he saw me, then glanced at the check clutched in my hand. Suddenly, he spoke. "Carson, the first step to pursuing someone isn't a check." I didn't understand what he meant. My dad had taught me from a young age. Money is important. Everyone in this world loves money. You can use money to get anything you want. I couldn't read the blush on Simon's cheeks or the shy way he bit his lip. All I knew was that he had rejected me. My money was useless. I threw the check at him and walked away. Later, I told my dad about it. He found it amusing. But I'm his only son. Whatever I wanted, he would have Mr. Williams make it happen. So that day, Simon was summoned to the principal's office. I don't know what Mr. Williams said to him, whether it was a threat or a temptation. I didn't care. All I knew was that when Simon came out, his face was grim. But when I linked my arm with his, he didn't push me away. And I knew. What money couldn't achieve, power could. Simon was the most beautiful person I had ever seen. Otherwise, I wouldn't have willingly stayed cooped up in our home for 4 years. When Simon graduated and wanted to start a business, I eagerly offered to help him with my family's resources. He refused, his face stony. He said, This is my own business. Don't you want a lot of money? I'll give it to you. Of course, I helped him anyway. He couldn't stop me. In the beginning, Simon often came home drunk from networking events. He was never a messy drunk. He would just have a flushed face and hazy eyes, and he'd wrap his arms around my waist, swaying as he mumbled things I couldn't understand. He said he started his business to prove to my dad that he was worthy. He did it to make a lot of money. But what was all that money for? Simon never said. He had few material desires, and both his parents were gone. There was nothing he really needed money for. Our one-sided breakup ended with Simon in the hospital. After he was discharged, he showed up at my dad's house, enthusiastically helping me pack my things to move back with him. He happened to run into my dad, who was home from work. He froze for a second, his shoulders tensing up. Then he quickly straightened his posture, lifted his chin, and marched out the door with my suitcase held high. I glanced back at my dad. He frowned and shook his head at me. I raised my eyebrows, pouted, and mouthed a word at him. Helpless. My dad blinked and turned away. It was a few months before I saw the little secretary again. At Simon's request, I went to pick him up from a business dinner. The people he was drinking with were a group of pot-bellied middle-aged men. I recognized several of them from my dad's office. They were pretty high up, and they were forcing Simon to drink. Simon was drunk, lying on the sofa with red-rimmed eyes, staring at the ceiling. The other men were huddled together, whispering about something. I quietly walked over and caught a snippet of their conversation. "Let's get a girl to take good care of him. He's gay," I interjected coolly. The men, caught off guard, instinctively replied, "Then get a guy to take care of him." They turned to look at me, and their brows furrowed. "Who's this waiter?" One of them barked. "What are you interrupting for? Is it your place to speak?" The man's gruff voice echoed through the private room. I didn't say anything, just looked at him with a smirk. "You look familiar, uncle." The man's frown deepened. I could tell he was probably the lowest-ranking one there. He didn't recognize me. Just then, the man raised his hand to hit me. But someone behind him who did recognize me was faster. A loud slap echoed through the room. The man clutched his face, staring at the even fatter man who had hit him. He didn't dare say a word, just looked on resentfully. The fat man shot him a fierce glare, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and turned to me with a fawning smile. "Mr. Carson. Haha. What a coincidence. This idiot disrespected you. I've taught him a lesson for you, haha." In this city, the last name Carson, combined with the fat man's obsequious behavior, was enough. The first man's face went pale. He was quickly dragged out, screaming. I walked over to the drunken Simon and said with a modest smile, "I'm here to take my boyfriend home." The fat man dabbed at his sweat with a handkerchief, still smiling awkwardly. "Haha. So this is your boyfriend? No wonder he's so talented and handsome. Haha." I ignored his forced laughter and walked out of the room. Someone else quickly entered the room behind me. As I was helping Simon out, I bumped into a waiter who was rushing around a corner. He kept his head down, apologizing profusely. His head was bowed so low his hat fell off, revealing a familiar face. "The secretary?" The secretary's face paled as he looked up at me. "Mr. Carson," he stammered, then suddenly dropped to his knees and hugged my leg. "It really is you. I'm begging you. Please let me go. I was blind before. I didn't realize who you were. That's why I had improper thoughts about Mr. Simon. I was wrong. I really was. Please, I'm begging you. Let me go." I stood there for a moment, stunned. My memory of the secretary was limited to him drugging Simon and getting arrested. That was only a month ago. How did he get out so quickly? I thought for a moment, a smile playing on my lips. "What was your name again?" "I can't remember." "What are you talking about?" "But fine." I readily agreed. The secretary was taken aback. I took a step back, moving Simon away from him. He snapped out of it and started sobbing. "It's all my fault. I was having mental problems. I saw these comments saying I was Mr. Simon's official match. It's my fault. I'm crazy. Please don't cast me aside." The secretary rambled on, until he finally landed on a key point. You said you could see comments? I asked, frowning. I realized that I hadn't seen any comments since the drugging incident. But this secretary was saying he saw the same things. I gestured for the secretary to follow me home. Back home, I had Mr. Williams arrange for a renowned psychologist to conduct psychological tests on me and the secretary. The results came back quickly. In a sterile white room, even more comments suddenly appeared before my eyes. Ugh, why has the plot gone so far off track? Where's my domineering CEO and his cute secretary? Forget it, the plot is so messed up. Did the author die or something? No. I don't want to see this damn ex-boyfriend with Simon. Simon, wake up. This guy only likes you for your face. I'm dead. What the hell is this plot? Dropping this story. Strings of garbled characters materialized in the air, growing more numerous and distorted. They twisted and shattered, finally converging into a human face. I reached out, my hand passing through the empty space. Mom, my mother never loved me. I was just the product of a business marriage, the result of her being forced to abandon the man she loved to marry a man of power and status. In her words, I was the product of a rape. I used to scoff at that. She enjoyed a life of luxury while unconditionally hating me and my father. But I never imagined her hatred ran this deep. Not a single one of those comments had a kind word to say about me. Even after her death, she still wanted to see my father in jail and me dead. I closed my eyes. A distant voice called my name, and I slowly opened them. My dad was standing beside me, with an anxious Simon next to him. I struggled to turn my head to see the secretary who was just like me. Just then, I overheard the psychologist speaking to my father in a low voice. There's a shadow on the brain, covering the hippocampus. It could be affecting his consciousness and memory. I spoke up. What about the secretary? My dad frowned and raised his hand to point beside me, but froze mid-motion. I turned my head. Lying on the bed next to me was the secretary, his face as white as a sheet. On his wrist was a gaudy bracelet. Just then, the doctor flipped through his notes. He raised an eyebrow. Your symptoms are quite similar. The secretary stirred and stretched, waking up. He opened his eyes, saw us, and froze. The next second, he clutched the blanket and screamed. Who are you people? Why am I here? I smiled at him. What's your name? After the doctor calmed him down, the secretary turned to look at me, his lip jutting out in a pout. My name is Leo Smith. I breathed a sigh of relief. But just then, the newly calm Leo suddenly became frantic. I'm going to be late for my interview. Let me go. Simon curiously asked what interview. Leo sat up straight, lifted his chin, and announced proudly, Radiant Group. Simon glanced at me, then said, You don't need to go. You've already been fired. In the end, at Simon's insistence, he transferred all his company shares to my name. His rationale was, I started it for you anyway, to prove to you that money isn't everything. The first step to pursuing someone should be giving them flowers, Simon said with a grin. And then a lot of money. From his own lips, I finally understood what that blush all those years ago meant. Simon, do you know what your dad said to me that day? I was lazily nestled in his arms, counting property deeds. Simon sat up straight, putting on a serious face. Here's $5 million. Leave my son. Me. Did you agree? Simon looked at me, his eyebrows dancing with delight. Of course not. I told him I was truly in love with you. I pursed my lips, imagining the look of shock on my father's stern face at Simon's response, and I broke into a wide smile. I reached out and ran my fingers through Simon's hair. He leaned into my touch, resting his head in my hand. His voice softened. Carson, I loved you long before you loved me. During that freshman orientation, it wasn't just me who saw the boy standing under the shade of the tree. That boy saw me too, and his face turned red.